Debuting for Harris.
Earlier this year, the sports world was essentially blessed to be able to see in the Stanley Cup Finals a team down 3-0 force a Game 7. Ultimately, they lost, but are we seeing something similar happen in the MLB right now? All it takes is for one team to get that spark and that momentum, and things can change. The Dodgers were up 3-0. They no longer are. So that will be tremendous if we could see that happening and see history happen. I don't think it will, but you never know. Also, in the NFL, we are seeing a lot of injuries, a very plagued season. We're going to talk just about some of those injuries and also preview the games yet to come this week. I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights, where I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and with me today, as always, is Ed Smith.
Welcome, y'all.
And Thaddeus Lloyd.
Hey.
What's going on, fellas? It was a great NFL week. Well, it was great, because all three of our teams won, so that's always great there. But I want to jump into this World Series matchup because it looked like it was just all Dodgers as they took a commanding 3-0 lead in the series. It seemed like nothing can stop them. Shoot, nothing could stop Freddie Freeman at this point, okay? And they went out to an early lead in Game 4. It looked like, all right, the sweep is coming. Get your broomsticks out. It's happening. And the Yankees decided this would be embarrassing to get swept in front of our home crowd in the World Series. So their bats started rolling. It became a new game, and it's 3-1 now. We are now seeing Game 5 take place, and, well, there's a very interesting ball game happening there as we speak, but anything could happen. But as I said earlier in my intro, momentum can change everything. Ed, you know all about this. How quick momentum can change a game, a series. Do you see New York really turning this around?
I don't necessarily see them turning this around. However, it's funny to me how, yes, momentum can change at any point in a baseball game. And it seems to me the momentum changed for the Yankees when the ball was by Gronk's buddies yanking the ball out of Mookie Betts' glove in foul territory last night. It was just the oddest thing. Yes, fan interference is a thing with baseball. That's part of fans being so close to the action. And God love them, that is part of being at a baseball game. You are that close to the action and where you could be part of it. That is amazing. However, with that happening last night, or let's just say Tuesday night, that was where the Yankees basically decided, hey, we're New Yorkers. We're not going to give up that easily. And they came back last night. They're putting on a great show this evening while we're taping this. We don't have a final result as of yet. But I got to say, momentum is one thing. But when you have a complete monster of a player like Freddie Freeman just on it after coming back from injury, there's not much anybody can do about that, because one of the things about baseball is everybody gets their turn to make that play. It doesn't matter if you're up 20 or if you're down 20. You still get your turn to make that play. And Freddie Freeman has definitely made the plays that have been available to him through this series at this point.
Yeah, and although the Yankees won last night and made it a kind of a new series, they didn't get swept. The biggest winner wasn't even in the stadium. That's none other than Steve Bartman, all right, because his name is practically cleared now because this has to go down in history as one of the craziest fan interference plays we'll ever see. I mean, the effort that these two guys put in getting that ball dislodged from Mookie Betts' glove was more than I ever did in any test in high school. Okay? So it's just they were relentless trying to get that ball out, and they succeeded, but ultimately the umps saw what happened. We have replays, and the right call was made, but they're out. And Thaddeus, this doesn't surprise you. Of course, Gronk knows them. That I saw that earlier, and I sent that to my brother. I said, "Of course, Gronk knows them."
Yeah. It wasn't surprising. I was just scrolling through my feed and I saw that. I was like, okay, that's kind of crazy. And then Gronk's name pops up and I'm like, well, now it's less crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Even Kay Adams said that too, which was funny. Is that coming from you, Gronk? I mean, of course you know him, but so Gronk's a crazy one. He's a guy who makes me laugh. But yeah, like I said, it's gonna go down in history as one of the craziest plays you'll ever see. Steve Bartman, cheers! You're off in the sunset now. Go enjoy life. You hopefully Moises Alou forgives you now.
Although I do find it funny that when you're comparing this to Steve Bartman, that the Cubs were up in that game and then Bartman interferes and they lose that game. The Yankees were down in the game on Tuesday. They get the interference and then they wind up winning it in convincing fashion, mind you.
Yeah.
It's just funny how that dynamic seems to work out that way.
Yeah, the fans, they really got more into it as it went on too. So New Yorkers, they're always loud. That's one thing. Um, but out with baseball, in with football, as we have our NFL recap and first game on the docket: Green Bay Packers and Jacksonville Jaguars. And Ed, this game didn't have any business being as close as it was, did it?
No, it really didn't. However, there were a couple of things about the game that took place that made it what it was. And something that I talked about on this show a few weeks ago is that Jordan Love may have the demeanor and the makeup of Aaron Rodgers, but he has the gunslinger mentality of a Brett Favre. And that is being proven week in, week out with the fact that Jordan Love is tied for the league lead in interceptions. So getting the best and the worst at the same time, that's what has let other teams back in to make closer games than what they should be. Now, Jordan Love did fall to a groin injury during this game. Malik Willis came in any situation when you have a backup quarterback that hasn't been there that long, what do? You're going to lean on your stars. And while the wide receiving core gets a lot of praise as a group, there's not a star in that wide receiving group. So who do they lean on? They lean on Josh Jacobs. And Josh Jacobs had his best game as a Packer, 25 carries, 127 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That is a recipe for success. I don't care who's at quarterback. As if you can run the ball that way and make the passing game easy for the quarterback, you're going to win more games. Now, one thing that helped the Packers in this game is Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, Lord love him, he's trying, but he is not a quarterback that is super confident right now, even though he did throw for 308 yards, because he keeps running into getting these injuries from his wide receiving core and not much of a run game to fall back on. So what's he to do? He's to keep throwing the ball and when you're a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence that hangs onto the ball maybe a little bit too long, you can lose the ball sometimes, or you could rush and throw the ball into coverage. These things happen to him. So there were 2 touchdowns that the Packers got off of Jaguars turnovers. That is a recipe for success for the Packers. Unfortunately, the turnovers that the Packers had kept the Jaguars in the game. So that's why it was so close. But in the end, the better team did win, and it was uh, the second week in a row where the Packers walked off on a field goal and on to the next week. And this is going to be a big one. I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, big one indeed. And, these 2 quarterbacks got 2 of the richest contracts in the NFL this offseason. So when you see that, you expect to see, a good dueling matchup. And we may not have gotten it per se, but you have to give props to Trevor Lawrence. He's trying to do everything that he can because this team, was expected to be a lot better than they are right now, and they aren't. They just aren't performing really there. And he did have a really decent game. Did have an interception, but Jordan Love, that injury is something to keep an eye out on. And I know you've been looking at it, Ed, going into this very big matchup here. So this is his second injury this year. He's just going to be banged up all year? And I think just as a Packers fan, you have to face that. But how are your hopes filling the rest of the season with him?
With Jordan Love by himself, it's not injuries that will keep him from playing per se, but it will keep him from playing at the level in which we saw last year and where we expected him to go this year. So that's the bigger concern. Now, the fact that we do now have Josh Jacobs to lean on in those tougher times, we know that he is a upgrade at the running back position when we're talking about tough yards or between the tackles. I love Aaron Jones. He is a hard runner and a slippery runner, but Josh Jacobs, I think, fits this offense a little better because he can be the battering ram to all these speed options and speed things that the wide receiving core is doing on the perimeter. So having that stable force in the center, that is a great help to this offense, whether Jordan Love is healthy or not.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because having a healthy run game to help complement a passing game can help take the pressure off. And Thaddeus knows this with your 49ers, having a healthy Christian McCaffrey to really keep that running game up to par can take so much pressure off Brock Purdy's shoulders. Well, with not having McCaffrey so far this year, the Niners, they've had to kind of really establish their identity because of injuries. But we saw a Niners team that really needed a big win. And I know the Cowboys aren't the best, but they got a really big win this last week. Would you agree?
Yeah, most definitely. As Guy Haberman said, one of the 49ers insiders, I believe, he said if they would have lost to the Cowboys, it would have been one of the most devastating losses in franchise history. And it's it's kind of an understatement, to be honest. But yeah, we got the W. We've been 4-0 versus the Cowboys the past 4 or 5 years. Dak Prescott just does not do well against this 49ers defense. And then, of course, he did his little thing where, he came back from multiple touchdowns. And then at the end of the game, you had, the Cowboys got the ball back down by 6, and there was a little bit of panic. It was like, oh no, he's going to come back. And then 4 straight incompletions was like, oh no, never mind. I forgot. He's Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
So he's a good quarterback, not a great quarterback. Great quarterbacks would have at least, taken their time with the drive. It was really weird that they threw 4 straight passes, even though it was 2.5 minutes left. So that was kind of weird. But it was really good that the Niners got the win back. Our running game has been doing well. in the absence of Christian McCaffrey, but it'll be hopefully even better uh, with him in it. You had Jordan Mason go out early in this game, and we had our fourth round rookie Isaac Arendo from Louisville, and he did a great job. He's that archetypical Kyle Shanahan speed back that he always likes to employ. He struggled a little bit during the early month of the season, but he's picked it up the past couple weeks where versus the Seahawks and now versus the Cowboys, and it's just really good to know that they have a third really good running back, and that's the opposite of the Cowboys because the Cowboys do not have a running game whatsoever. They really only have CD. Like we've said before on this show, like it's literally just Dak and CD is the entire offense. Because you have an old washed up Zeke. And in this last game, I believe, yeah, he ran 10 times for 34 yards. One of those rushes was for 11 yards. So he rushed outside of that one time, he rushed 9 times for 23 yards, which is barely over 2 yards a rush. And that 11-yard run was the longest run the Cowboys or Ezekiel Elliott had all season, at least. So it's very, very uh, bottom of the barrel for the Cowboys as far as the running game goes. And this Cowboys team is just looking very mediocre. They didn't have Lawrence or Parsons in this game, their top two pass rushers. I don't think it would have mattered that much anyway. Parsons has been erased by Trent Williams the past times they played anyway. So yeah, it's just not looking great for the Cowboys. But again, this is a good win for the Niners. We're going into the bye week. Um, hopefully getting some people back. Christian McCaffrey is expected to be back after the bye week. The big piece I'm waiting for is Dre Greenlaw. Hopefully he comes back because this Niners defense is not looking that great as far as normal Niners defense is. Like instead of a top 5 defense, it's like a top 10, 15-ish defense right now. So hopefully we'll get that back. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much my exact point here is to what you were saying about, well, they threw 4 straight passes. You find that odd, but it's not because this team has no run game. The Cowboys are just so bad, and they thought bringing Delvin Cook from the practice squad was really going to elevate it. No, 6 carries for 12 yards. I mean, there was no excitement about that. They can't run the ball at all, and their only wins this year are on the road. And they did, play a road game here, which they did lost, but that's their only strong suit pretty much so far this year is playing on the road and just passing it. And yeah, they had a great kind of comeback at the end, which I know I saw. Uh, Gosh, your guys' linebacker, what's his name? He was not happy about that you guys allowed that comeback.
Oh,
So
Fred Warner.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you guys put up a great third quarter, 21 points, and really made it your guys' game. But Dak did his thing that we always say he'll throw the ball, but always come up short. So pad the stats, and yeah, that's about it. But George Kittle, that was also big. The fact that he was dealing with an injury was announced that he was going to play and picked up big yardage, had a great game. Debo did as well, coming back as well. So, if your injuries could get better, then I think that the Niners will have a great rest of the year because the NFC West right now is not the best. So you guys still have a chance.
I don't know if it's not the best. It's just now all of the teams are really competitive now because for some reason the Cardinals are sitting at
Cardinals,
the top of the
I
division
know.
at 4-4.
Yeah,
And then we got, oh look, the Niners are 4-4 too. Wow. Seahawks are 4-4.
yeah.
Okay. And then you have the Rams at 3-4, but people are scared of the Rams because they finally got Cooper Cup and Puka
Puka,
Nakua
yeah,
back in the same week. And wow, this offense looks a lot better. Huh. That's funny. When you get your top weapons back, the offense is going to look better. And so this NFC West has got to be really competitive. And I don't know if the second place person is going to make the playoffs because we have some other good teams in the NFC. So really it's looking like as far as almost halfway through the season that the winner of the division is the only one from that division to go to the playoffs. So it should be very interesting
yeah.
down the road.
Yeah, and speaking of offenses looking better, I have to point towards my Pittsburgh Steelers here. As since Russell Wilson took over at quarterback, the offense has been clicking a lot more, and it is a beautiful sight to see as a Steelers fan, because we always know Steelers defense is always phenomenal, but it's the offense ever since Ben retired. How's it going to look? And it's looking a whole lot better. The Arthur Smith type of offense is really setting it up for the passing game because of how much we're starting out the game running the ball. I would really like to stick to that more, because there's times where we kind of let off the gas with running it. But Russell Wilson has really brought a new life to the Steelers offense. The score may not indicate it, but the Steelers looked great this game, their offense especially. And their first several drives, they drove it down. It's just we struggled to score in the red zone. Granted, we did score twice, but those touchdowns were called back, one on penalty and one on replay. But uh, it's looking a whole lot better than it did. If only we could combine a Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, I would love that, because there are so many plays that Justin Fields could make that Russell Wilson at his age now can't, and size too, because Justin Fields is a lot bigger. But Russell Wilson is a lot smarter, higher IQ on the field, and we're looking at a Russell Wilson that wasn't the same Russell Wilson that he was in Denver. But Steelers defense, and Ed, I got to ask you, I mean, how much of a game wrecker is TJ Watt?
So I had an interesting debate with somebody a couple of days ago about who is better, TJ Watt or JJ Watt, if you put them in their prime. Who do you take? And it is
Yeah.
I'm taking Derek Watt
Yeah.
easily.
yeah. So he is the focal point of that defense, but it's not anything that you can stop, because the Steelers recognize what having the focal point of a defense means. You've got to have people around him to take the pressure off of him, so he can get those one-on-one opportunities, even though he's being double teamed and chipped and basically taken out and pancaked every chance that somebody can get. He is still in the middle of the play, whether it's through a sack, whether it's disrupting the route pattern, whether it's dropping back into coverage. I know that it happens very little, but it happens. He is one of the biggest game wreckers in the game today.
Yeah, and back to the whole J.J. Watt, T.J. Watt question, it's tough. And even as a Steelers fan, of course, I'd love to choose T.J. Watt, but J.J. Watt was ahead of his time. When I say ahead of his time, the pure dominance. Of course, we had guys like LT on defense, Lawrence Taylor, who was just a wrecker, and we've had that before. But J.J. Watt was just unstoppable, and not only that, this guy was scoring touchdowns on offense too. Let's not forget when he was doing that. J.J. Watt was everything, so it's hard to really pick against him. But T.J. Watt really knows how to wreck a game, and that's exactly what he did. But there's another guy in this game that I really want to give really high praise to, and that's Dexter Lawrence, who is leading the league in sacks. But I saw a stat on Monday that really popped out to me. Dexter Lawrence so far this year has the highest double team percentage in, I want to say, like the last 10 years. So that's more than Aaron Donald. Thaddeus, does that shock you?
Not too much, but that does shock me as far as like the time scale, like 10 years. That's kind of crazy. But yeah, Dexter Lawrence is undervalued or underappreciated because it's in New York. It's not a winning football team. And you get these people, and every once a decade, you get these really good players, but they play for really bad teams. Think of on the offense, Joe Thomas in Cleveland, 15 years as the left tackle, one of the top 3 left tackle his entire career, but he never won anything of note. And people kind of forget about him. Well, I feel that that's what's happening with Dexter Lawrence, or Sexy Dexy, as he calls himself.
Well, I certainly find that Dexter Lawrence is basically that meme of the Ferrari sitting next to the trailer. He is that good, and that team is that bad.
Yeah.
They really are. And It begs me to, ask the question, should Daniel Jones really be starting, or is he starting because of his contract?
Uh, no, he is not an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, 1-15 in primetime games. That's just it's embarrassing.
I mean,
Yeah,
Kirk
they did.
Cousins is
They
better
did.
than that. Come on.
Yeah,
Kirk
they
Cousins.
did pay him a lot of money for it, and yeah, I think they are playing for his contract. I think Dable likes him though, but that play though, that 2-point conversion though,
Yeah.
that was one of the funniest plays you'll ever see in NFL history.
Well, it oddly enough, the Oregon Ducks, we do that a lot for 2-point conversions, and we succeed at it. This team looked like they were trying it for the first time ever.
Yeah, well, it was funny because I rewatched that play like 50 times because commentators were like replaying it 50 times, and it was so funny because all the linemen on the left side in front of neighbors, they were all looking at the ball to see if it was going to be snapped, and Daniel Jones was looking at the defense, saying, oh, the defense isn't doing anything, so he asked for the ball while the linemen are still looking at to see if the ball's going to be snapped. The ball snapped, and Highsmith just goes right through everyone. And wow, oh wow, he blows up a play. That was too funny. It actually might have worked, but just yeah, like you said, they might have probably never done that before. And they're like, "Is this real? Are we actually going to run this play right now?"
I was actually waiting for like a timeout because that's how bad it was looking.
Oh gosh.
Reminds me of that old Indianapolis Colts fiasco where they had like 3 linemen over the center, and it was
Yes.
just the center.
Yeah,
And
the Jeff Saturday. Yeah.
yeah, it was like, what are you doing?
Trying to throw off the defense as best as you can. But before we get to previewing this next week, Thaddeus, how are we looking so far?
We are not doing too bad. Of course, last week David joined us. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it again, but he went 3-2 last week for what it's worth. But then I also went 3-2. Ed went 4-1, and then Matt went 2-3.
And I was a Hail Mary away from being 5-0.
And I got a Hail Mary, so I have a winning record this week. I was like, I took the Commanders. You know what? They would have won by more if they had Mariota. Trust me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a Duck fan, and I can't even, but
Yeah, so that puts the season record. Matt is 17-23, Ed's 28-12, I'm 21-19, and then David's at 3-2 for the one time he did it with
at
us.
this rate, David's probably gonna catch up to me. I'm doing so bad at these picks. It's embarrassing. But you know what's probably a little bit more embarrassing? Well, when the backup quarterback comes in and gets a pivotal win, and that's none other than Jameis Winston coming in for the Cleveland Browns and beating the Baltimore Ravens, who at that point were one of the hottest teams in the NFL. Oh my, that was interesting. And the Los Angeles Chargers looked impressive as well. We're starting to see a young connection between Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey, and I was really impressed with that. But as these two teams battle, Ed, how do you see this game playing?
Well, and looking at the Browns, this may be a new look Browns with Jameis Winston at the helm. But so far, they are 27th in the league in points per game, which is terrible. And then you look at the Chargers, they're first in points allowed. So that's not that doesn't mesh uh, in favor of the Browns. But even though you have Jameis Winston taking over for the Browns to make them a little bit better, there's still one thing that the Chargers do that the Browns do not, and that is run versus stopping the run. The Chargers, they run more than what the Browns do, and they stop the run better than what the Browns can run. So those stats right there, that tells me more than just the points per game thing, because, like I said, with Jameis Winston coming in and getting that first game where he is just hitting everything, doing doing all that he can. There's still a necessary component to this, that what is Jim Harbaugh known for as a coach? Stop the run and run the ball. That is what he does. Control the clock, don't make mistakes, and that recipe in and of itself seems to be the complete opposite of what the Browns' offensive philosophy has been this season so far. So I am definitely taking the Chargers in this one, and I'm just to I stay within the parameters of what we're seeing out of both of these teams. I'll probably put it somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to uh, 20 to 17.
Thaddeus?
Yeah, this is this is gonna be fun because now we got Jameis Winston second start, and Jameis Winston, the old 30-30 man, he's back at it again. And well, he almost lost the game last week, and then he literally wins it the very next play. So you never know what you're gonna get with Jameis Winston. It could be 5 touchdowns, it could be 5 interceptions. Who knows? He could beat the Chiefs or he could lose to the Panthers. We don't know. So I do think Ed has some really good points. Um, I know that this Browns offense looked way better with Winston as QB. Deshaun Watson, as all the fans have been clamoring for, was absolute trash. And any QB was an upgrade over him, including Jameis Winston, and it looked like that. They even won against the Ravens. Now the Ravens defense hasn't been great this year, but besides the point. I do think the Browns are going to start to be putting up a little bit more points now with Winston in there, and especially that benefits Nick Chubb as well. But I don't see them pulling off this win. This Chargers defense is just too well coached. It's a Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter defense. It's really good. They're number one in the NFL still, I believe, in points per game. I'm going to take the Chargers, but it's going to be close. But I got the Chargers winning 23-20.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be a close game. And I feel like this, even though it shouldn't be, I feel like this could be a game where Nick Chubb starts to kind of break out a little bit, break off that rust some more. Because Nick Chubb's, when healthy, is one of the best running backs in the NFL. So we don't know when that game could happen, but it's bound to happen because of how great he is. On the other hand, they made a movie after James Winston called Split because, well, split personalities with how he's going to perform. But this is a game at home in Cleveland. It can be a tough place to play at. And something's telling me to go with the Browns here. And even though the Chargers should win this game, they really should. I feel like the Browns are going to pull this one off. I'm going to go 22 to 17. So we're all very close on our predictions as far as score-wise goes, but I got the Browns winning 22-17. On to the next game here. We've got Baltimore Ravens coming off a loss. A very embarrassing loss to their standards. And the Denver Broncos, who looked really good. Bo Nix looked impressive. I love to see it. And to see Sean Payton have the success, too, is also nice. But Thaddeus, how much do the Ravens take out their anger on the Broncos in this game after losing that game against the Browns?
I think they're going to be able to dish it out. You saw the Broncos; they're 5-3, very surprising 5-3 with Bo Nix, who's not playing even good quarterbacking until you play against the Panthers, probably the worst team in the NFL. You're obviously going to look good. You had one competent team in the Broncos and one very incompetent team in the Panthers. Now this time you're going to see the Broncos versus the Ravens, and I think the Ravens just have a little bit more stability and more, competency than the Broncos do. I think Bo Nix is going to struggle against a Ravens defense that needs to kick its butt into a higher gear because they've been heavily criticized the past couple weeks for their loss, and they just haven't been good this year. They've probably been hearing the noise. They're going to probably want to step up. However, I wouldn't want to discount that Broncos defense because that Broncos defense is also really, really good. Um, I'm interested to see what they're going to do against Lamar Jackson. Um, and but I do think the Ravens are going to pull this one out by a little bit more than what people are expecting. The game against the Browns was close, and the Browns surprisingly pulled it off because A, it was Jameis Winston, and then and then B, that was a division matchup. This one, it's going to be against the Broncos, a non-divisional matchup, and I just don't think the Broncos will be able to prepare for Jackson and Derrick Henry because it's even in that loss, they still looked unstoppable. That offense did. So I'm going to be taking the Ravens here 24-10.
And who do you think Shannon Sharp's pulling for in this game?
Probably himself,
Yeah,
because that's just the
yes.
kind of guy he is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about him.
Well, when I take a look into this game, one of the things that stands out to me is third down percentage. The Denver offense versus Baltimore's defense, they're both terrible. So who's going to win that part of it? Yes, we're still seeing these massive numbers for running the ball in Baltimore's offense, and yes, they are going to be uh, they have to be challenged this week and their pride after losing to the Browns last week the way that they did. Whereas Denver, as Thaddeus said, coming off of beating a just a not a very good organization as a whole, let alone the team on the field. Uh, Baltimore is definitely going to come into this and just really bow up and show the world that last week was a fluke. They know that they should not lose to a team at that level. They are going to beat a team handily at this level because they know that they're one of the top 5 teams in the NFL and they are going to come in here and play like it. What I do see in Denver's favor, though, is they are doing a decent job of keeping Bo Nix clean, one of the best in the NFL, and not giving up sacks. But you also have to consider that Bo Nix is one of the top leaders in rushing for the Broncos on the season. So the more hits that he gets, the tougher it's going to be for him to remain in the pocket and not try and continue to run the ball, which is just going to play into the linebacking core's hands of the Ravens. So all that being said, I'm with you, Thaddeus. This is going to be a tough game to keep close. I am taking the Ravens, and I'm taking it 34-10.
Yeah, and the Ravens just got a new shiny toy. They got Deontay Johnson in a trade from the Panthers. Deontay Johnson, who played for the Steelers, I know a lot about. Great route runner, one of the best in the league. That'll help out with Zay Flowers really exploding more. They aren't going to have to constantly go to Isaiah Likely, one of their tight ends, to be a top receiver. It's going to be spread out more now that they were able to get another receiver there. That just helps them out tremendously. And of course, the run game of Derrick Henry. I just feel like the Ravens have more pieces in place that if it comes down to it and they need a conversion on third down, they're going to be the team that gets it done. So that and their defense, I think Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphreys, Roquan Smith, those are all veteran players, even though Kyle Hamilton's young, that are just, I feel like, are going to be overwhelming for a young Bo Nix. Although he is starting to click, things are starting to look good for them. The Ravens always have a great defense, just like the Steelers, and Bo Nix is going to run into a great defense. So I'm going to have to go Ravens here. Also, a little bit higher scoring for the Ravens, 31-14. So all three of us got the Ravens winning here, just like most of Vegas does.
Yeah, and then just one interesting note is remember we had the Washington versus the Ravens game, Commanders versus Ravens,
Yeah.
and I mentioned that the Ravens have the number one rush defense. Well, right now they still have the number one rush defense, but they also have their 32nd in pass defense,
Yeah.
which is very funny. So because they've been out their top two corners the past
Yeah,
couple weeks
true.
as well.
Nate Wiggins
So
and yeah, so
yeah, but
it
it's
does
funny,
add
I
up.
think.
Yeah, to have the best and then the worst is so. But on to probably one of the biggest games of the weekend. Ed's waiting for this here. Most NFL fans are, and that is the Detroit Lions going into Lambeau to take on the Green Bay Packers. And a lot of it is going to be how healthy is Jordan Love going into this game, because he is the star quarterback. That does have a big impact. Secondly, can Green Bay's defense, with the league leader in interceptions, Xavier McKinney, really bring on pressure to Jared Goff and this Detroit offense? Because this Detroit offense is just unstoppable on all levels, from the run game to the pass game. And they've been near flawless. That's how great they've been on offense. Can Green Bay really bring the heat on Jared Goff and really throw him off his rhythm? Because so far, teams haven't. Minnesota couldn't. Can Green Bay do that at home? And Josh Jacobs, just as Ed talked about earlier, he has really come to life. Welcome to Green Bay. Running the ball phenomenally. That takes a lot of pressure off Jordan Love, but you need to have a healthy running game always. And he had a really coming out party. I was impressed with seeing that. So, this is going to be a tough game to really bet on. It's going to be close. I don't see any blowout here whatsoever. It's a divisional matchup. You know they're always going to give their best. And right now, I mean, it's a 3.5 point spread or around there. But I'm going to have to give Detroit here. I'm going to go 27-24. Thaddeus?
Yeah, it's going to be intense. It's division matchup. Lions looked unstoppable, as you said. Jared Goff is looking unstoppable. And you know what's really interesting this season is normally when you think of how to defeat Jared Goff, you give him pressure, right? Well, he's leading the NFL for quarterback stats in all pressure categories. He's been the number one quarterback against the pressure. The only time it hasn't worked was against the Buccaneers. That's their only loss in the season. All other games they have completely destroyed, except for the Vikings game as well. But they've completely destroyed. Last week they did it with their special teams. Jared Goff only threw for 85 yards, and they won by what was it, 40 points? So it's absolutely incredible what they're doing right now. However, I do think good things have to come to an end. They're going to be playing a newly revamped Jeff Halfley Packers defense, and I think it is pretty good. And even if Jordan Love doesn't start, um, Malik Willis has been a revelation in this offense, and him and Josh Jacobs have been a really good pairing together. Josh Jacobs has been really good in this offense. They've been picking it up slowly, and it's been working really well for him. And I just think kind of like what happened with the Broncos, where they played a really bad team last week. Now you're going to be playing a really good team this week. And I just don't know how that's going to balance out. You obviously, beat the really bad team. That's good. But you're going to be going against the Packers. It's a big game. So it's it's one of those 50-50 games for me, but I'm gosh. Yeah, I'm I'm really conflicted on this. Um, you know what? Give me the Packers in this one. I just think, you know, just coming off a gritty win against the Jags and then the Lions just having too easy of a win versus the Titans, a bottom team. I just think that's just gonna throw them off just a little bit. And I'm gonna have the Packers winning 29-27.
Ed, Ed, I guess I probably should have picked the Packers because There's a new guy in the building. His name's Robert Saleh.
You can change your pick if you want.
I
Okay, all right, all
I
right.
just figured Robert Saleh. I mean, whew. What were you thinking, Ed?
Well, first off, Thaddeus, I want to say thank you for believing in my Packers when I don't. Uh, um, here's where I'm at with this game. Jair Alexander is questionable, and we're going to need all hands on deck in the defensive secondary to handle what the Lions are going to bring at us, because they're going to come at us with thunder and lightning from the backfield, which is going to open up Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is going to open up the tight end, which is going to open up everything else. And if Jair Alexander is trying to play with either a pulled hamstring or a twisted knee or anything like that, he's gonna let somebody get free that shouldn't be, and that's going to be a problem. You mix that in with Jordan Love's penchant for trying to play hero ball a little bit and be the gunslinger. That I don't necessarily think those two factors bode well for the Packers in this game. And all other things being equal, this is going to be just a smash headbutt type of game. But those two factors, I think, fall under the Lions' favor. And unfortunately, for that reason, I am going to say that the Lions will win this game. And we'll probably see it in the 31-30 category.
Yeah, it's gonna be a close game. I feel like that's an obvious pick around the board is that it will be close, but you can't make mistakes in this game. It will cost you if you make a mistake. So, yep. But division games always bring out the best in you, and sometimes the worst. But another division game that's happening is the Los Angeles Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. And the Seahawks have really, after starting the year 3-0, they've kind of been going through an identity crisis similar to Jameis Winston and his split personalities of really, yes, they know how to throw the ball, but they aren't getting these wins like they were the first 3 weeks. The Rams, on the other hand, they got their guy back, Cooper Kupp. How many games? What's the over-under till he gets hurt again? But you have him. You got Puka Nacua, and it's a division matchup. It is on the road, though, and Seattle is always known to not be an easy place to play. But how much of an impact does this Ram offense have by having both their star receivers playing? And I think it's going to have a huge impact because when those two are at their best, we see a Rams offense that can sometimes look unstoppable. So how's that going to go going against Seattle in Seattle for this game? And I just feel like the Rams, after seeing Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp come back, they're looking great. And we talked about how close this division is already, and like Thaddeus also said, the winner of this division is probably going to be the only one that makes it to the playoffs. They have to recognize that. They know they need to win this game to even be within arm's reach of the Niners and Cardinals at this point in the season. So I'm going to have to go with the Rams here with this offense. It's starting to look good again, and Stafford has always been a great quarterback, and having two receivers like that, it's a quarterback's dream. You're licking your chops. So I'm going to go with the Rams this game. It is a division game, but I'm going to have to give them a 24 to – actually, no, I'm going to go 31-24 Rams. Ed.
So, in looking at the injury report for this game, the Rams will have Jordan Whittington on the field with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. And that is going to wind up being just devastating to try and keep up with because of the routes and the route combinations that Sean McVay can come up with for those three guys. is just phenomenal. So it's going to be a tough ask, especially when you have Cameron Young for the Seahawks, Nehemiah Pritchett, and Mike Morris, all questionable, basically playing on hobbled legs, if you will. That's going to be tough to get to Matt Stafford, which is going to give him time to get the ball to those three receivers. So that is definitely advantage Rams. On Seattle's side, you do have those. You do have a wide receiving core that has been playing together a long time. They are uh, a tough out no matter where they're playing, but the fact that it is being played in Seattle makes them all the tougher because that is a different kind of track than being in SoFi Stadium. That is an elements type of game, and if some of those wide receivers uh, get basically alligator arms because they get chilly from the rain, that is going to be a difference in this ball game. Because when you take a look at both of these teams on paper, they're both terrible running the ball and terrible at stopping the run. So they have to rely on these passing games. And at this point, the Rams passing defense, I trust a little more than Seattle's. So that that leads me to believe that the Rams will win this game. But I think this is going to be one of the sneakiest, really good games of the weekend. And that's why we definitely wanted to talk about this one because it is just splitting hairs between these two teams. And I've got the Rams winning this 27-25.
And Thaddeus, being out in your division, I'm sure you're pulling for both teams to lose or a tie. So, but you have to give some input here.
Yeah. Look, as Ed mentioned before, the injury report is huge, and you saw the Seahawks get the crap kicked out of them by the Bills. But who did they not have? They did not have DK Metcalf, and DK Metcalf is still questionable at the time of this recording. He's still questionable for the game. If he plays, I think the Seahawks might have a chance. But if he doesn't, I think they might get the crap kicked out of them again by the Rams this time. And now, if you think about it, the the Rams' new head coach, Mike McDonald, he was the Ravens' defensive coordinator last year, and which was an excellent defense. I believe they were the number one scoring defense last year. Their only big bugaboo last year was against the Rams. They allowed 33 points against the Rams. And this Rams offense, with both receivers and Kyron Williams, who is a top 3 running back in the NFL, believe it or not, he's extremely good. This offense is very, very deadly and very potent. And I'm going to have it by a wider margin than you guys because if DK Metcalf does not play, this Seahawks team is kind of toast, in my opinion. So I'm going to take the Rams 34-17.
You know, we talk about that injury report for Seattle and both those teams, but let's talk about the injury report for the Tampa Bay Bucks as the Bucks go in and they play the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, Chris Godwin's on the IR. Mike Evans is out. Who do they have? I mean, for receiving wise, was it Kate Otten? I mean, that's pretty much all that they have, and I feel bad for Baker Mayfield because if he had Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and I know Ed remembers this, this is shades of Texas Tech versus Oklahoma. When it was an offensive matchup between Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield for the ages. This was if you were a college football fan, you loved watching that. And I feel like this is a game where we could have seen that. And we still may. Baker Mayfield's still a great quarterback, and he's going to have to improvise without having his star receivers. But not only is it interesting looking at that injury report, when I look at the offensive stat comparison between these two teams, one team's undefeated, the other team's 4-4. The team that's 4-4 is leading damn near every offensive category. And it just blows my mind, especially the red zone scoring percentage. The Chiefs are scoring only 51% in the red zone, whereas the Bucks are at 67. Patrick Mahomes' team at 51% in the red zone is unheard of. And the Chiefs are still undefeated. That should scare the living crap out of everyone in the NFL. That the Chiefs are lacking offensively in a lot of key categories, yet they're still undefeated. Can you imagine this team when Travis Kelce starts getting more into things? And now they just picked up DeAndre Hopkins, which I know a lot of people will say, well, he's washed up, but it's still D Hop. The Chiefs are going to run the AFC and the NFL at this rate this year. Yes, they're undefeated, but they know how to win games. And they continue to show that each and every week. So, of course, I'm going to go with the Chiefs this game at home. I would love to see a great quarterback duel, and we still may see that. Of course, it'll never top the Texas Tech Oklahoma game, but it sure would be fun to see. No defense at all, just quarterback duel here. But I'm going to have to go with the Chiefs in this game. And I really think that the Chiefs offense is going to have one of their best games this year. I'm going to go 35-17 Kansas City. Thaddeus.
Yeah, well, the Chiefs have been unstoppable, and it doesn't look like it though because look at Patrick Mahomes' box score. It's absolutely awful. He has what 8 touchdowns, 8 interceptions on the year, and we're almost halfway through the year. Is he going to be under 20 passing touchdowns? Did anyone see that coming? I don't. Well, I didn't. But, but despite that, and despite him turning the ball over and this offense not scoring a ton of points, they're undefeated. And the biggest reason is they are top 3 in positive yards gained. They always run the ball on first and second down, and they're always left with these little third and threes every single time. I saw this when they played against my Niners. They were just kept on getting these positive plays. Mahomes is barely getting sacked, and they're always staying ahead of the chains, draining that clock. Mahomes is playing game manager, and look at that. They're leading on. They're leading on to this incredible defense. In my opinion, the number one defense in the NFL, and they're just leaning hard into it. The defense is delivering, and who cares if Patrick Mahomes throws an interception and the ball ends at the road 5 yard line? They'll just ask the defense to step up, and they forced the Raiders last week to go 4-and-out, even though they got the ball on the Chiefs' 5 yard line after the interception. It's like no biggie. We'll just live to the defense. So this defense is what's incredible right now, and I know Baker Mayfield, even despite losing Evans and Godwin for the year, Evans for at least a couple more weeks. He was still slinging it versus the Falcons, which was good to see. Cade Otton looks like a really good tight end as well. Looks to be his favorite target, and Sterling Shepard's out too, which is unfortunate. But I still think the Bucks will be able to put up some points. But as you said, Matt, I don't think it'll be enough. This looks like a Chiefs victory, although every single game they played, they have not yet blown out an opponent, and I still don't think that'll continue either. So I got the Chiefs winning this 24-20 in a close game.
Okay. And how are we seeing things?
So, for as good as the Buccaneers offense has been, I you take a look at it, and the Kansas City offense, if you swap jerseys, you would think that it's the correct jersey, but it's not. The Tampa Bay offense has been just dynamic, but as we saw last week, you lose the top 2 wide receivers on that team, you're throwing to the towel boy, who just got put in. Uh, because there's nobody left on the sideline. That type of wide receiver room is what we're talking about here, because not only are they missing those two, it's just everything about this game is telling you that Kansas City is just going to dog walk them, and I don't think that's going to be the case. I'm with you, Thaddeus. I think that the Kansas City defense has been playing very, very bend but don't break, and because they're not breaking, they will give up some stuff, but they're not breaking it all, and that allows the freedom for Patrick Mahomes to work through not having a number one receiver before getting D-Hop this week, which at this stage of his career is probably a number two. But as you said, Matthew, he's still D-Hop. He can still pass on a lot of information to Xavier Worthy on how to be at this level and the work ethic that it takes, which Xavier Worthy has shown up, but not as much as what we thought based upon all these clips and leaks that we saw during training camp. One of the things that stands out to me is these are the top two teams in the NFL in third down conversions. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on. Who can which defense is going to bow up and get the other team off the field. Because if neither one can, it will turn into an old school Big 12 game, just like Matthew's talking about. And so that's what I'm looking at as far as the deciding factor for this particular game. And right now, even though Patrick Mahomes has 9 interceptions, which is tied with Jordan Love, which nobody saw that coming, I've got to ride with the one that brought me. I've been saying since the beginning of this year that there is the chance that we do not see Kansas City lose at all. And why would I continue? Why would I guess against that at this point? Because they've proven me right so far. There's no reason to think that it's going to change at this point.
Yeah, I don't see why either at this point. So I agree with you there, and it sounds like we all agree with each other that Kansas City will win this game. And I want to touch on one last topic before the show is over. This was news that broke earlier today, and I feel like it is something that needs to be talked about. And that is none other than head coach Shane Steichen announcing that Anthony Richardson is benched. Joe Flacco will be the quarterback indefinitely. I do think Joe Flacco is a better quarterback right now for that team. So I agree with the decision. But this is where things get interesting, because when Anthony Richardson was drafted by the Colts, they caught a lot of flack because he didn't quite deserve to get drafted where he was at, but he had such a high ceiling. Now here he is in his second year being benched. And yes, as a head coach, you do need to make changes to make your team better, especially if you're still in reach of a playoff hunt that's in the middle of the year. So I get why he did it, but this needs to be talked about more because he was supposed to be their future. And now you got a seasoned vet in Joe Flacco taking over for the team. Once again, I do agree with him doing this, but Ed and Thaddeus, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this breaking news, because there seems to be a lot more going into this. This is more than just an experiment.
Well, okay, so you said that the Colts got a lot of flack for drafting Anthony Richardson where they did. Well, now they're getting a lot of Flacco.
Yeah.
So I had to do it.
I almost did it earlier too.
So to run an offense, you have to be more than just a Superman type of quarterback. But I think this goes deeper than that. This goes well into this this whole thing where Anthony Richardson decided to just take a couple of plays off because he was tired. Well, guess what? So is the guard. So is the tackle. So is the tight end. So is the wide receiver. So is the center. Everybody else on that field is out there giving it everything, every single play, the entire time that they're on the field. And because you had to run, 20 yards? Oh, that was a long way. I was tired. I don't care. Then you run a play where you hand the ball off and you let the running back do the running. Or you sit back and throw at least a couple of plays there.
Yeah.
You are not going to endear yourself to your team if you are taking plays off that they all have to run, that they all have to play. And I think this is much, much deeper than just, ineffectiveness. That ineffectiveness is going to cost Anthony Richardson his life in the NFL. And the Colts, where do they go from here? Because once you get past Flacco's 1-year contract, which at this point, he should not be the savior for a franchise. He is not. He is not in the prime of his career. He's seen a lot and he can guide a team, but I would feel better with Gardner Minshew like they had last year running this team than Joe Flacco, who they brought in on a 1-year flyer just to make sure they had somebody on the roster in case Anthony Richardson went down. Well, guess what? Anthony Richardson has taken himself down, and this team, I see nothing but bad things ahead for them in the near future, and they're going to be searching again in the draft, and they're probably not going to get anything for Anthony Richardson because even just taking one play off, that tells the rest of the roster that he is more important than they are, and they can't keep him on the roster, and they're not going to be able to trade him. He has totally screwed himself when it comes to his life in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I don't condone lying, but at this point, you should have just said that you had an injury or something else because
It's weak something, yeah.
Yeah, you really jeopardize a lot now because now you're benched. Now other teams are going to be iffy of even wanting to trade for you. It's crazy that we even talk about that. A second-year quarterback, and even same thing could be said with Bryce Young, that here they may be getting traded so early in their careers. But Bryce Young, I think, is just in an unfortunate circumstance as well. But Anthony Richards said, dude, I mean, you played in the swamp, okay? You played in the swamp, which is a horrible environment, and now you're playing indoors and you struggled, you retired. I mean, dude, you're in the NFL. You can't be doing that. So this was really big and not surprising one bit to see this. So, but it's something noteworthy to keep an eye out on. So pay attention to those details.
Yeah, there was a lot of reaction from it because it's like, oh, he's a developmental project. Yeah, I'm getting through this with this bloody nose. I don't
Good
care.
for you.
But there's a whole discussion around it. It's like, oh, why are you giving up on a project? He's a project for a reason. Well, unfortunately, in today's day and age in NFL, it's like you're wondering, like, why are these QBs getting shorter leashes? Well, it's because these coaches are getting shorter leashes. You see it. Like the past couple of years, there have been so many coaches fired, especially like midway through the season. We just saw Robert Saleh got fired. Well, not because of the QB, but we just see these coaches getting fired. So they're like worried for their job. They're like, Shane Steichen's doing all he can. They have a good O-line. They have good receivers. They have a great running back. What else is there? And they have a scrappy defense. What else is there not for Anthony Richardson? And you had people, yesterday saying, oh, the receivers dropped like 2 to 5 passes. Well, it's kind of Richardson's fault. And he kind of misplaced them too. But even if he did complete those passes, he would still be under 50% completion percentage, which is horrible for NFL standards. You wouldn't even get away with that in college. okay, for historical context, his career completion percentage is 44%. For this season, it's 44%. Looking at the last 25 years, the QB that's come closest to him in a full season was Tim Tebow in his second year, and he had 46%. This is how bad this season has gone for Anthony Richardson.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he is literally the definition of boomer bust. You're either going to get a 70-yard bomb or you're going to have 20 straight incompletions. That's literally how this has been going. And the Colts would have won that game versus the Texans. The Texans were trying to hand them the division on a silver platter on Sunday with how many mistakes the Texans were making. And Joe Flacco could have easily won them that game. So I think it's the right decision as well. We're going to have to see how the season shapes out because the Texans just lost Stephon Diggs for the season. So the Texans have a good lead on it now because Anthony Richardson was playing. So it's going to be interesting how this division is going to be going forward, but it's not looking good for Richardson as a pro for his career.
Yeah, and both those quarterbacks went to Florida. That's not good. But yeah, let's be honest. Robert Saleh did lose his job because of the quarterback, but just in a different way. Quarterback was also the GM. So, but yeah, this is Joe Flacco's team now. So let's just see how things go. And Thaddeus, if you were Anthony Richardson, he would have quit with his bloody nose. So glad you did it, man. Glad you did.
It reminds me, it's like, what are all these modern athletes doing? It's still the NFL. It's still a hard hit front game. And he's tapping out. Oh, I need a break. I remember when Phillip Rivers played the AFC Championship on a torn Achilles. What happened to that?
It's a different league now. It really is. It's players are still tough. I will say that, but not like that.
As much as I dislike the guy, Chris Sims once played an entire game with a lacerated spleen.
Yeah,
almost died on the field.
I know. Yeah, it always makes you wonder how on earth did that happen? How do they get through on that? So adrenaline for sure, but yeah. But that's about all we have today, folks. Appreciate you guys tuning in once again. We appreciate your feedback in the comments, your opinions, your predictions as well. So if you can let us know there, drop it in the comments and in the chat. You should also hit that like and subscribe button and share these videos. That's the best way to get views. Let other people know what we're about. So we appreciate you guys doing that for us. But until next time, guys, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.